It was supposed to be a relaxing day on the water, just blue skies, calm waves, and the salty breeze. But for Maria, a quiet woman with a kind smile and modest clothes, the fancy yacht party quickly turned into something else. From the moment she stepped onto the deck of the rented vessel, whispers followed her every move. The other guests, dressed in designer swimsuits and dripping in jewelry, couldn't hide their smirks. They eyed her simple dress, her thrift store sandals, and exchanged looks as if she didn't belong. Some even laughed behind their sunglasses, nudging each other with cruel amusement. Maria stayed calm, even as the conversations turned loud and pointed passive. Jabs about people who don't know how to dress for a yacht, or some folks just chasing luxury without fitting in. She stood alone at the railing, eyes on the horizon, ignoring the sting of being mocked for simply being herself. What the crowd didn't know, however, was that Maria wasn't trying to impress anyone. She hadn't even wanted to come to the party. Her husband had insisted she enjoy the ocean while he handled some last-minute business, but then came a deep hum in the distance. Heads turned, sunglasses came off. The laughter died. Cutting across the waves was a stunning Superyacht leak, massive and breathtaking. It dwarfed the rented boat they were on, casting a long shadow over the smug crowd. Crew members in crisp uniforms stood ready. And at the edge of the upper deck, someone familiar stood waving. Maria simply turned around, her face calm, and gave the faintest smile. Her husband had arrived. And the look on everyone's face? Priceless. But what happened next shocked even Maria, because her husband hadn't just come to pick her up, he had a message. And it would silence the entire party in the most unexpected way. As the towering Superyacht slowed beside the smaller boat, the water around them rippled with quiet power. The name on the side of the vessel shimmered in silver letters. The Serafina, a yacht known in elite circles but never expected to show up unannounced. The party guests stood frozen, their eyes darting between the yacht and Maria, who now looked nothing like the woman they had mocked just moments ago. She didn't speak, didn't gloat, didn't need to. Her silence said more than any words ever could. One of the hostesses, trying to regain her voice, finally blurted out, "Wait. That's your husband's yacht." But Maria didn't answer. Instead, she calmly accepted the hand of a uniformed crew member who had arrived in a small tender to escort her as she stepped down. People began whispering faster now, the tone shifting from mockery to confusion, then to panic. Who was Maria, really? She had never mentioned wealth. She never bragged, never dressed to impress, never tried to stand out. To them, she had seemed almost invisible. But clearly, they had missed something important. Inside, the tender Maria sat quietly, her eyes flicking once back to the yacht she was leaving. Behind her, faces pressed against the railing, some pretending to smile, others clearly shaken. Husband hadn't just sent a message with his arrival, he had sent a reminder that real strength doesn't need to be loud. But why had Maria kept everything so private? Why would someone married to a man of that stature show up alone, dressed so simply, and let herself be humiliated? What did she know that they didn't? And as the tender pulled away, a new question lingered in the salty air. What exactly did her husband plan to say once she boarded the Serafina? Because the silence on that yacht party was only just beginning. As Maria stepped onto the Serafina, she was greeted with a quiet bow from the crew and a warm embrace from her husband, Daniel. He looked sharp in a crisp white shirt, but his eyes were focused only on her. "Are you all right?" I softly. She nodded, but the look on her face told him everything. She wasn't upset, just tired. Tired of pretending to be small in rooms that judged her by appearance. Daniel's jaw tightened. He had always admired her strength, but today he had seen something else: restraint, grace, and quiet dignity in the face of open disrespect. Meanwhile, back on the rental yacht, tension hung in the air like heavy fog. The woman who had led most of the mocking Sabrina paced near the edge of the deck, trying to make sense of what had just happened. She had assumed Maria was just someone tagging along for a glimpse of the high life. Now she felt exposed, embarrassed, and maybe even threatened. Some of the guests whispered that Daniel was the reclusive tech investor who had turned down magazine interviews and rarely made public appearances. Others speculated he was involved in real estate deals across Europe. No one really knew. But one thing was certain: Maria wasn't the nobody they thought she was. A few guests scrolled their phones, trying to look up the Serafina, but there was barely any public info. No social profiles. No flashy news coverage. It was as if Maria and Daniel had built their world to stay out of sight, till now. From the upper deck of the Serafina, Maria looked out across the water, expression unreadable. Daniel stood behind her, speaking quietly to a staff member. "Get the other yacht's captain on the radio," he said. "Tell them I'd like to speak to the guests. All of them." Alia turned slowly, eyes widening. "Are you sure?" He gave a faint smile. "It's time they learn the truth. But not just about us." Maria didn't ask what he meant, because deep down, she already knew this wasn't just about one humiliating afternoon. Something much bigger was coming. The sun began to dip lower, casting golden light across the waves as the Serafina hovered just offshore. Everyone on the rented yacht had gone quiet. Their once loud conversations now replaced with nervous glances and hushed theories. The crew of the smaller boat gathered near the radio, confusion on their faces as a formal request came through. From the Superyacht, Danielle wanted to speak directly to the guest live over the intercom. The captain hesitated, unsure if this was normal protocol. But when the yacht's owner makes a request, even uninvited, it's hard to say no. Moments later, the loudspeaker crackled to life. Every eye turned, every breath held. "This is Daniel Reyes," the calm voice began. "Some of you have met my wife, Maria. You may have noticed she doesn't wear labels or speak much. She never needed to. But today, many of you did speak loudly, cruelly. Not just to her, but about her, and you didn't know anything." Face flushed red. She tried to walk away, but the words kept coming, slow and measured, cutting through the salty air like glass. "I've spent years building something real quietly, privately. Not just a business, but a life. With her, and I've watched people pretend to be better simply because they can afford the show. But character isn't rented, and class doesn't shine through diamonds. It shines through how you treat people when no one's watching." The crowd was still, faces frozen. Maria stood on the upper deck of the Serafina, her eyes fixed on the boat across the water. She wasn't smiling. She didn't need to. The truth was speaking louder now. Then Daniel paused, and his tone shifted. "But this isn't about revenge. It's about responsibility. Because there's something else you all need to know about why we're really here today. And once I say it, everything you think you know about this party, this location, and even a few of you, is going to change." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Maria's fingers tightened on the railing. She hadn't expected this part, neither had anyone else. And just like that, the calm ocean between them felt like it was about to erupt just as the guests braced for what Daniel was about to reveal. A loud beeping interrupted the stillness. The rented yacht's captain glanced down at his comms, his face tightening. Then, without a word, he rushed to the navigation console. His voice lowered into the radio, tense but controlled. Something wasn't right on the Serafina. Daniel turned toward one of his staff, who approached him with urgency. "Sir," he said quietly, "we've picked up a drone circling. High-powered lens, not ours." Maria's face shifted. Her eyes narrowed, and a knot formed in her stomach. She wasn't used to this kind of exposure. Everything in their life had been kept off the grid on purpose. No press, no influencers. No eyes that didn't belong. Daniel returned to the mic. "For those of you wondering why today matters," he said slowly, "you're standing just a few hundred meters from land my company is acquiring land we intended to protect. What you don't know is that several people on that boat, including your host, already knew that." Whispers erupted across the deck. Sabrina froze. Her smile had vanished hours ago, but now something colder replaced it. The pieces were clicking into place. Daniel continued. "This gathering wasn't just a party. It was staged. A few of you came here today under the illusion of leisure. But really, you came hoping to strike a deal behind closed doors. What you didn't count on was that Maria would be here, or that we'd be watching." The air grew heavier with every word. Some of the guests tried to speak to defend themselves, but they couldn't form sentences. Maria, standing quietly at Daniel's side, kept her gaze on the smaller boat. For the first time, the people who mocked her didn't just look embarrassed, they looked exposed. And then, just as the truth began to settle in, the drone hovering overhead dipped lower. A second signal was picked up, unregistered. The crew on the Serafina moved quickly. Maria turned to Daniel. "This wasn't just about me, was it?" Daniel met her eyes. "No," he said. "It's much bigger than us. And someone doesn't want the truth coming out." As the drone dipped closer, the crew on the Serafina activated countermeasures, jamming its signal and forcing